Legal Terminology Module. There are 7 lessons with their corresponding desired objectives to be achieved by participants within this module. At the end of these short lessons, participants should have gained a basic understanding of the meaning and usage of legal terms in common legal situations and functions. Yes, we have a disclaimer. All the information provided in these short lessons is publicly available and provides interpreters working in the legal field with an understanding of basic legalese and other commonly heard terms. This information is not intended to be construed as legal advice. Lesson 1. Resources and Research Techniques, Intralingual versus Interlingual. The objective here is for participants to gain a basic understanding of available resources and how to research for legal terminology. This is just a beginning. These lessons will give you the tools to keep learning. However, before we can begin to look at the types of resources and research techniques available, and because as interpreters we understand the importance of precision in language, let's make sure we know what we are going to be learning about. By definition, legal terminology is a specialized area of technical vocabulary used in the legal field wherein words or terms have specific meanings which may be different from the meanings these same words or terms have in everyday use, other technical fields, or when used in different contexts. We can find legal terminology in a specialized dictionary or a legal glossary. Remember that a glossary, also known as a vocabulary or clavis, is an alphabetical list of terms in a particular domain of knowledge with the definitions for those terms. As interpreters, we find that we are constantly asking ourselves, how do we say something or other in the source or target language, or do we know what something or other means in the source or target language? Therefore, before we can decide where to go to acquire new terms or investigate an unfamiliar term, we first have to determine if the query is going to be an interlingual one or an intralingual one, since that will help guide our research. Ideally, as interpreters, we should first try to think of the meaning within the source language before trying to find its direct equivalent in the target language. That takes us to the concept intralingual. What does intralingual mean? Consider the term. It has the prefix intra, indicating within or inside, and lingual, which is relating to having to do with language. Intralingual occurs within the same language, which can involve rewording or paraphrasing. In this particular instance, we are referring to the fact that the meaning can be conveyed in several ways within the same language. For instance, when we hear the term motion, we should first make sure that we know not only that it means an act, process, or instance of changing place, according to the first definition that pops up in Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, but that if we are talking about a motion in a legal setting, it also means an oral or written request made by a party to an action before, during, or after a trial, asking the judge to issue a ruling or order in that party's favor, according to the glossary of commonly used court and justice system terminology. Thus, the need for interpreters to strive to broaden their language knowledge as much as possible in all of their working languages so they can look for meaning within the language first. Now, let's look at interlingual. What does interlingual mean? Again, consider the term. It has the prefix inter, indicating between, and lingual, which is relating or having to do with language. Interlingual is the effect of language forms when two languages cross or overlap. However, for the purposes of researching terminology, this simply means looking for the terms in a bilingual dictionary and a field-specific glossary, and then confirming understanding of the concept as it is used in the specific field or context within that language. It is important to recognize that sometimes one's dominant language or L1 language, often one's mother tongue, can interfere with our understanding of how the term works in the L2 language. which is why interpreters are encouraged to always double-check meaning in their working languages as well as usage within the context of the field. This is also why, during training, interpreters are encouraged to think meaning for meaning and not word for word as the approach to take when interpreting or translating. Before we continue, spend some time researching on the internet and identify at least 3 monolingual dictionaries in English, 3 legal dictionaries in English, and 3 legal glossaries in English. Use the handout 1A provided to write them down. Now that you have conducted your own internet research, here are some examples of possible resources to help broaden your language and understanding of your working languages. A monolingual dictionary often provides all the possible definitions for the meaning of a word in a particular language. Remember, interpreters should first understand the concept in the source language, whether it is the L1 or L2 language, which is why it is so important for an interpreter to always have at least one good monolingual dictionary for each working language available. For English, consider the Oxford Dictionary or the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Both are available online at the links provided on this slide. Please note, since this is a language-neutral class, you will be listing the monolingual dictionaries in your L2 language or your other working language based on the research you previously conducted. Now, spend some time researching on the internet and identify at least 2 monolingual dictionaries in your other working language, 2 monolingual legal dictionaries in your other working language, and 2 monolingual legal glossaries in your other working language. Use the handout 1B provided to write them down. We have established that interpreters need field-specific dictionaries in their working languages. Now that you have conducted your own internet research, here are some other examples of possible resources to help broaden your knowledge and understanding of your working languages. Arguably, one of the most well-known and used legal dictionaries in English is Black's Law Dictionary, currently in its 10th edition. The ISBN numbers are provided so you can look the book up at any booksellers. You can also find other English legal dictionaries, such as Merriam-Webster Legal Dictionary, at the link provided on this slide. Please note, since this is a language-neutral class, you will be listing the monolingual legal dictionaries in your L2 language or your other working language based on the research you previously conducted. Interpreters will also need field-specific glossaries in their working languages. Remember, a glossary is an alphabetical list of terms in a particular domain of knowledge with the definitions for those terms. Here are examples of readily available English legal glossaries. The National Center for State Courts hosts the Consortium for Language Access Glossary of Commonly Used Court and Justice System Terminology. The United States Courts also provide a very complete one. And of course, do not forget the CNO Legal Glossary hosted by the Court News Ohio website. Please note, since this is a language-neutral class, you will be listing the legal glossaries in your L2 language or your other working language based on the research you previously conducted. Before we continue, spend some time researching on the internet and identify at least 2 bilingual dictionaries in your L1 and L2 working languages, 2 bilingual legal dictionaries in your L1 and L2 working languages, 2 bilingual legal glossaries in your L1 and L2 working languages, and use the handout 1C provided to write them down. It is important to recognize that besides monolingual dictionaries, you're going to need bilingual dictionaries and glossaries as well. Now, let's talk about digital libraries. Digital libraries combine technology and information resources to allow remote access, breaking down the physical barriers between resources. Although these resources will remain specialized to meet the needs of specific communities of learners, digital libraries will allow people to take advantage of wider ranges of material and communicate with those outside the formal learning environment. One example of a digital library is the Migration Policy Institute's MPI Language Portal, which is a translation and interpretation digital library where anyone can search the database to find resources used to provide services to LEP individuals. Some of these resources are language access plans, translated documents, interpreter and translator contracts, forms, court interpreters, they have a searchable Spanish-English glossary, criminal and juvenile justice terms, education, and human services information. Additionally, there are useful multilingual sites for interpreters. You can go to Terminology by Agile Tortoise, which includes a dictionary, thesaurus, and word research tool in an integrated package. There is Free Dictionary, which offers links to bidirectional dictionaries in 16 languages. Your Dictionary features a range of online dictionaries, thesauruses, word games, and other references. Dictionarist, multi-language dictionary, helpfully provides many example sentences. A bit of experimenting suggests usability may be lower outside of European-based languages. Lexicool, online dictionary search engine, currently has links to over 3,500 bilingual and multilingual dictionaries and glossaries. And Logos, 1,275 glossaries in over 60 languages. There may be instances where you are required to develop an account with the site, so please check before you go into the site in case you need to set up an account. Some additional resources. Lastly, other additional resources to consider would be those that are helpful when interpreting those words that do not have a direct equivalent in the target language. Remember, a well-trained interpreter will have a running glossary of terms applicable to all kinds of settings. Thus, it is essential that the interpreter understands what the term means in the source language first before being able to accurately deliver the message into the target language. Because idioms are one of the most obvious challenges to working interpreters, it is important that the interpreter first understand what the idiom means in the source language in order to interpret it accurately into the target language. Look for Dictionary of Idioms, Glossary of Idioms, Colloquial Language Glossaries, and Vulgar Language Glossaries. The Oxford Dictionary of English Idioms is a good source, but there are other glossaries online. Furthermore, make sure to look for professional dictionaries of idioms in your working language if available, since these are also a good source. Interpreters often say they cannot interpret the bad words because they don't know them. For Spanish interpreters, the following may be a helpful resource: Glosario de términos vulgares e insultos, malas palabras. In Lesson 1, the key points to remember are: interpreters need multiple types of resources to develop general and field-specific terminology in their L1 and L2 languages. Interpreters need to consider terminology research techniques that address both intralingual and interlingual purposes. Individual activity. Complete the exercise in Handout D by matching the idiom with its meaning. Then translate or write down the equivalent meaning of the English idiom or idiomatic phrase into your working language. Write a short essay about intralingual and interlingual interpretation, giving some examples of each case based on your understanding. End of Lesson 1.